So this event will be recorded. So by the state of California, we just have to announce that this meeting is being recorded and for just for our participants in online and both here on site. Thank you for joining today's event. I'm Heath Bigman with the Native American Activity Group. Yeah, traditionally in our Native culture, we always introduce ourselves by our clan. So to keep with those traditions, ya Heath Bigman yeshe, but ni shle torich ni bashichin, lizaflan dashiche topohan dashinale. And so the reason why I say these clans is there's a lot of cultural meaning with these clans. These clans are passed down from my mother, my father, and also my paternal and maternal grandfather. So these were clans that were developed like 2,000 years ago, and they kind of know like the origin stories of where we come from. And so they were also used to kind of identify who or how we have kinship with people. And so this was one of the earliest days of kind of like when folks were trying to understand genetics and how things worked. And so that way we knew in our culture that we couldn't have close relationships if we decided to have a relationship with a spouse. And so this prevented us from actually marrying someone that was really close to us. And so within our Navajo traditions, they were very strict. And here in the United States, we can actually marry people that are second cousins. But with our Native tradition, we have very, very strict standards. That's even stricter than that of Western law. But yeah, before I get into the bio of Mr. McDonald, I would like to start an opening prayer in my Navajo language. Benny ne degole do yat ego bichka ne dole ego na hiskitago nitsen hajongo nikete hajondo ne hayagi hajongo ne het egi hatso hazrogo hajmanaskli. Thank you. Our guest here today is Peter McDonald. He grew up on the Navajo Reservation out in East Nas Bons, Arizona, which is located on the Navajo Reservation. It took tremendous courage and bravery for Mr. McDonald to enlist into the military at the age of 15. So he proudly served our nation, and during the phases of World War II, he served in the South Pacific and to the North China as the 6th Marine when the Navajo Code Talkers, as a Navajo Code Talker. The Navajo Code Talker remained a top secret and did not receive recognition until 1968. That is like 23 years later when the operation was declassified. In 1982, the Navajo Code Talkers was given recognition by President Ronald Reagan and also named August 14th as Navajo Code Talker Day. And the reason August 14th was chosen was that this was the day that the emperor signaled to his people when he actually surrendered to the United States. And so 2 years ago, the Arizona governor signed into legislation as having National Code Talker Day as a state holiday. And so Mr. McDonald was honorably discharged as a rank as a corporal, and Mr. McDonald pursued his education at the University of Oklahoma and graduated with an engineering degree. Electrical engineering degree. He continued the graduate studies at UCLA while working as a project engineer on the Polaris missile project at the Hughes Air Force Company. Mr. McDonald served as a project manager for the manufacturing of the Polaris guidance missile guidance system and was a member of the elite member of technical staff of the Hughes Air Force staff. So Mr. McDonald has been a long list of entrepreneurs. He's prominent among his work in serving as a chairman of the Navajo Nation and was reelected into office 4 times, which is unprecedented in the Navajo history. So there are only 3 remaining Navajo Code Talkers today. So we're kind of reminded of how precious this is, and so how extraordinary we are having to witness these experiences firsthand. So kind of in closing, I'd like to thank the IDEA office and also AIAG for a lot of support to actually put on this activity. So Mr. McDonald, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that fine introduction. Now I know how a pancake must feel when it's all immersed in the good maple syrup. Yeah, good morning to each and every one of you who are here working in this one of the most important areas to preserve, protect the American government, United States of America. And I congratulate all of you for being here to develop and new things that will make us even more stronger in every way. I'm here this morning with my wife, Wanda McDonald. She's just sitting way over there. And also with my youngest daughter, Charity. And also the youngest grandson, Story. He's here too. And we are all very happy to be invited here to share a few things with you, especially the area of Navajo Code. You know, military codes have been used for a long, long time. Way back in the early days, they tell us that each side of the war always have some kind of a code to strategize against one another. I guess what you want is to surprise the enemy with your strategy. You don't want the enemy to know your strategy. And that was the reason for military codes. And today we still use them. And in World War II, Navajo Nation was part of the participant in developing a code that the enemy, they tell us, the enemy never broke the code that was used. Why was the code needed? You know, they tell us that after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the enemy started moving in our direction real fast, taking islands that we need in order to get close to their homeland. Islands like Guam, Midway, Wake Island, and other islands coming east to the United States. And they were breaking every military code that was being used in the Pacific. This presented a big problem, obviously, because you don't want the enemy to know what your strategy is. So military codes are developed and used to communicate with one another as to what the next move is going to be. And you don't want the enemy to know that. Well, in our case, the enemy did know what our strategies were. They had no problem breaking our military codes. A gentleman by the name of Philip Johnston was working near San Diego. In February of 1942, a few weeks after Pearl Harbor, he read in the newspaper that the enemy, the Japanese, was breaking every military code that was being used in the Pacific. So, Philip Johnston took it upon himself to go talk to the United States Marine Corps communication officers in San Diego, California, and suggested, why not use Navajo language as a code? He told them that Navajo language is very secure, and not too many people know the language outside the reservation. He said maybe 2 or 3 people outside the Navajo Nation may know the language. Otherwise, it's safe and secure. No one knows the language other than the Navajo people. Well, the San Diego Marine Corps Base Communication Office really didn't understand what Philip Johnston was talking about. So Philip Johnston came back to the Navajo Nation, brought back 4 Navajos to San Diego Marine Corps Base in February of 1942, and demonstrated what he was talking about. They put 2 Navajos on one end of the building with a radio and headsets, and the other 2 on the other end. These 4 Navajos developed Navajo code words, and they give them a message in English to send to the other 2. They wrote it down. They compared the 2 messages, the one that was sent, the one that was received. They look alike, but not necessarily the same. But to the Marines at San Diego Marine Corps Base, it looked like they had some possibilities. So they asked the Commandant of the United States Marine Corps in Washington, D.C., permission to try this suggestion made by Philip Johnston. The Commandant of the United States Marine Corps responded. His answer, no. Don't do that, he said. We don't know these Indians, he said. All we know is what we see in the movies. What we see in the movies is that when the Indians see a wagon train, they ride around their wagon train yelling and hollering, shooting arrows. This is not that kind of a war, the Commandant said. So, forget it. Besides, he said, these Navajos may not even become United States Marines. Marine Corps is a very proud organization. We don't want anyone to be wearing the United States Marine Corps uniform that might embarrass this proud organization. So just do the best you can. So communication officers, San Diego Marine Corps Base, told Philip Johnston, who suggested the idea, went back to work San Diego. About 2 months later, April of 1942, the commandant contacted San Diego Marine Corps Base, suggesting why not try suggestion made by Philip Johnston. Why? Because the enemy was coming real fast in our direction, taking islands that we need in order to get close to their homeland. So, the commandant told San Diego Marine Corps Base, creating a military code is top secret. No one should know that you are developing a military code using the Navajo language. So, I will just authorize you to recruit 30 young Navajos from the Navajo Nation. And don't tell them what you're going to do with them. Just ask them if they want to fight the war in the Pacific. That's all. And if they say yes, recruit them, give them preliminary physical exam, and make them go through boot camp just like everybody else. We want to make sure that they can become United States Marines. If they can't, forget about the project. But the project must remain top secret. No one must know. So, Marine Corps San Diego called Philip Johnston again. Philip Johnston was not a Navajo. Philip Johnston's parents came to the Navajo Nation late 1800 as missionaries to Navajo when Philip Johnston was just a little boy. So Philip Johnston grew up on the Navajo Nation from 1800 until 1940. He learned the Navajo language, playing with Navajo kids. And Philip Johnston also served in the United States Army during World War I. He served in Europe with communication unit. So Philip Johnston knows something about communication. That's why he made this suggestion. Why not use Navajo language as a code? So the commandant authorized to try just 30 young Navajos as a test to see, first of all, if Navajo can become United States Marine. Number two, to see if the code that is developed can pass muster and actually become a code that could be used in the Pacific War. Philip Johnston and Marine Corps recruiters came out to the Navajo Nation in April of 1942 to recruit 30 young Navajos. They didn't have any trouble contacting 30 young Navajos at boarding schools on Navajo Nation. They all want to join the Marines. Recruiters didn't tell them what they were being recruited for. They were just being asked if they'd like to join the United States Marine Corps and wear the beautiful Marine Corps blue uniform. They all said yes. These 30 young Navajos were then given preliminary physical exam. They all passed, but one dropped out. So there's only 29 young Navajos that was bused down to San Diego Marine Corps base. And this 29 young Navajos were made into one platoon in April of 1942. They went through boot camp, just like everyone else. There were several Marines going through boot camp all at the same time. Graduation, those platoons that were graduating were graded. The best platoon going through it during that period would be number 1, next one number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. Navajo platoon came in number 1 of all platoons that were going through boot camp at that same time. That got back to the commandant. The commandant, of course, was very happy. He said, terrific. Now process them through combat training to see what they do. Same thing. That's where they make you go through different weapons, use different weapons, and they all qualified, either sharpshooters or experts. That got back to the commandant again. Fine, okay, the commandant said, now, process them through communication school and see if they could pass that. So these 29 young Navajos were then transferred to Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton, Oceanside, California, to go through Marine Corps Communication School. Well, in the Marines, you go through boot camp. After boot camp, you go through combat training. After that, you get to choose what unit you like to stay with. Like if you want to be with the artillery unit, you go to artillery school. If you want to be with a tank unit, you go to tank school. These 29 young Navajos didn't have that choice. They were sent to Camp Pendleton, Oceanside, California, to see if they can pass Marine Corps Communication School. That's where they teach you how to use different communication equipment, make minor repairs. Also taught us Navy semaphore signals, taught us how to climb coconut trees with spurs, get way up to the bridge with telephone wires tied to our shoulder. Get up to the branch, you tie that telephone wire on the branch. And they tell us as soon as you tie that wire, you unhook yourself from the tree and fall straight down before you hit the ground, rehook the tree. Well, it's easily said and done. We unhook ourselves, fall straight down. Before we could hit the ground, we try to rehook the tree. 90% of the time you hit the ground before rehooking the tree. That's why most of us have bad knees. So, these 29 went through that communication school where they learned how to make minor repairs of all the communication units that were used, learned Navy semaphore signals, also taught us Morse code. Morse code at that time was very much in use. It went something like da da did it, did it, da da did it. That was Morse code. Also to go out in the field and make minor repairs of the units that you are using. After passing all of that, with all the rest of the Marines who would be in the communication unit, the 29 young Navajos were separated from all other Marines now. Now we're talking April, May, June of 1942. United States Marine Corps colonel, a full bird colonel, now took charge of these 29 young Navajos. They were put on a bus with United States Marine Corps colonel. These 29 young Navajos, a colonel and another Marine Corps officer, were then driven down toward San Diego, a few miles east side of San Diego. There was a building. That building had a high fence all around it with razor wire on top, like a prison. There's a gate, 2 guards at the gate. Big sign at the top says, "Top secret operation, keep out." The colonel processed these 29 young Navajos through that gate into a classroom about a third the size of this room here. And that classroom had tables with 4 chairs to each table, writing tablets in front of each chair with a pencil, 2 large blackboards on each side of the classroom wall with chalk and eraser. Colonel then told the 29 young Navajos, now we're talking June 1942, told the 29 young Navajos, "Gentlemen, you are United States Marines now. You ready to go fight the war in the Pacific. But before you do that, we'd like for you to develop a military code using your language." Wow. This is the first time these 29 young Navajos learned that they were recruited to develop a military code using Navajo language. What a surprise. I kept thinking if I was one of those 29s back in 1942, I probably would have said, "Hey, buddy, looks like we made a mistake here. We want to go fight the war in the Pacific. What's this Navajo Code business?" Did they tell you that? No. Well, why don't we get the heck out of here? We made a mistake. We want to fight the war in the Pacific, not develop a military code. We don't even know what a military code looks like. Well, like all good Marines, once you pass boot camp and also learn what the area you're going to be in, you salute all officers, click your heels, and do what they tell you. So these 29 young Navajos just sat there, nod their head. The colonel then said, there's a box full of military messages sent in combat. Look at them, read them, and see how you could develop a military code to send that kind of messages in the code that you're going to be developing. And the code you're going to be developing in Navajo must only be known by you. Another Navajo, not in this top secret classroom, would not know what in the world you are talking about. That's the kind of code we want. So, look through those messages that are sent in combat and see how you can develop a code that you're going to use to send messages like that in actual battle. So, they start looking at these messages, all written in code. Some of them just have 5 letters, or they already scrambled and coded, and others just regular messages. About 15, 20 minutes, one of the 29 young Navajos told the colonel, "Colonel, sir, we can't do this." Colonel said, "Why?" "Because all these codes are written in the English language, using the English alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F. Navajo is not a written language. We don't have Navajo words for letter A, B, C, or D. So how in the world are we going to send something that just have 5 letters of the English alphabet?" Colonel then said, "Well, gentlemen, that's up to you. How are you going to do it? But we want it done." So that was the colonel's answer. Go to work. Do it. So they sat there, these 29 young Navajos, talking about what do we do? This Navajo doesn't have alphabet, no Navajo word for letter A or B or C. One of the 29 went to the blackboard, wrote on a big letter A, and said, "Okay, why don't we just develop Navajo words for each letters of the English alphabet? So let's call the letter A Belasana. Belasana in Navajo means apple." They say, "Hey, that sounds good." So when we say Belasana or apple in Navajo, we actually talk about letter A. Good. So they wrote that down on their notepad. A equals Belasana or apple. How about letter B? What shall we call letter B? Let's call letter B Shush. Shush in Navajo means bear. On their notepad, letter B equals Shush or bear. What do we call letter C? After talking about it, suggesting different Navajo words, and they decided to use Mase as a code word for letter C. Mase in Navajo means cat. Letter D, B. B in Navajo means deer, D-E-E-R. All the way down the line. Some letters they had difficulty agreeing what to call, like the letter J. After suggesting what they should call letter J, one of them said, let's call letter J Kilichuki. Kilichuki in Navajo means jackass. That would be the code word for the letter J. We had a lot of jackasses on a reservation. We used them to herd sheep or ride them and get some wood or water. Very useful. All the way down to the letter Z. Code word for letter Z, Beshtotlish. Beshtotlish in Navajo means zinc. So now they got Navajo code words for each letters of the English alphabet. They told that to the colonel. Colonel had another Marine Corps officer in that top secret classroom. Colonel said, run it that all the codes you develop, you run by that officer. That officer is a Marine Corps military code expert. So any code you develop, you run it by him. So they did. They told the guy, the officer, this is what we did to develop code words for each letters of the English alphabet. The code expert said, terrific, that's wonderful. He said, but you know what? The enemy we have are very smart, very intelligent. They can break any code, and they use all kinds of methods. One of the methods they use to break code is repetition. We have a lot of English words that have more than one A or one B or one C. That's repetition. He said, like the word Guadalcanal. Guadalcanal has 4 A's in it. So if you're going to spell Guadalcanal, you're going to have to say Belasana, some more code words, Belasana, 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 4 times to spell Guadalcanal. Now that gives the enemy an opportunity to break your code. So what you did is great, but it's not break-proof. The enemy can break it. Back to the drawing board. What do we do? The 29 said. After talking about it a while, they decided to create 2 additional code words for each letters of the English alphabet. Like for the letter A, the first code word, Belasana, apple. The second code word for the letter A would be Tennit. Tennit in Navajo means axe, something you chop wood with. The other code word for the letter A would be Willachi. Willachi in Navajo means ant, A-N-T. So they ran it by the code expert again. He said, now we have 3 code words for each letters of the English alphabet. Like for the letter A, to spell Guadalcanal. The first A in Guadalcanal, Belasana. The second A in Guadalcanal would be Tennit, X. The third A in the word Guadalcanal would be Willachi, ant. The fourth A in Guadalcanal would be back to Belasana, apple. Of course, the code expert said, that's terrific, that's splendid. He said, I like it. Yeah, splendid for you. But what it means, we had to memorize that many more code words for each letters of the English alphabet. And this The charge was all code words that you remember must be in your head. You cannot take any of those code words that you developed written down in your pocket, because if you get shot out in the field, the enemy's going to search you, and they'll take those code words that you put on a piece of paper, and they'll break your code. So all code words you develop must be subject to memory only. You're not going to take any paperwork that has anything to do with the code words you just developed into battle. So, every day from sun up to sundown, down at this top secret location near San Diego, these 29 young Navajos developing code all through the month of June 1942. Top secret operation. Every Friday they had a test. They divide the group into two, Group A, Group B. Group A is given a message in English. They sent that message in military code that they had developed and memorized to Group B. They write it down in English. The two messages are compared to see how the two messages are becoming to be exactly alike. Testing their memory. Every Friday test. Every day, before you go back out that gate, they search us from the tip of our toes to the top of our head. Make sure we don't take anything out of that top secret classroom out that gate to our barracks. And they tell us, don't tell anyone out at your barracks what you are doing in this top secret building. Nothing. You will not tell your parents or friends, Navajos, what you are doing. This is top secret. Every way. That's how the first set of code words were developed all through the month of June 1942. At the end of June, they developed over 200 code words. Tests every Friday to memorize. Final test. Group A, Group B. Group A is given a long message containing most of those code words that they developed and memorized. Sent to Group B. They wrote it down in English. Colonel and the others compared the two messages. The one that was sent, the one that was received. By golly, they all look alike. Wonderful memory, with one exception, punctuation marks. Back to the drawing board to develop code words for punctuation marks. A period, no problem, Declassification, a black dot. Semicolon took a little time to develop code word for it. Eventually, they decided to call semicolon Declassification not dead. Declassification not dead in Navajo means a black dot that lost its tail. That would be the code word for semicolon. Question mark. Aja. Aja in Navajo means ears. Question mark look like an ear. All punctuation marks you could think of code words were developed, memorized, final test. Group A, Group B. Given a long message with all the punctuation marks you could think of, sent to Group B in Navajo Code. They wrote it down in English. They compared the two messages, the one that was sent, the one that was received. By golly, it looks exactly like, as a matter of fact, their report, the colonel's report, said it looks like a Xerox copy of the one that was sent. At this juncture, the colonel said, we'll quit here. Now, We can test this code you just develop and memorize in actual battle. 14 of the 29 young Navajos that developed these first set of code words were picked and sent overseas to join the 1st Marine Division. 1st Marine Division was getting ready to fight to land on the first landing in the Pacific. These 14 young Navajos out of the 29 that developed the code were sent overseas to join the 1st Marine Division. August 7, 1942, 1st Marine Division landed on the beaches of Guadalcanal, the first landing in the Pacific. August 7, 1942, with 14 Navajo Code Talkers to test the code in actual battle, to see how our memory works with enemy fires coming at us, mortar shells dropping on us, machine gun bullets traveling 5 or 10 inches over our heads. 3 weeks on the beaches of Guadalcanal. Hell. General Vandergrift, commander of the 1st Marine Division, sent word back to the Commandant of the United States Marine Corps, saying, "This Navajo code is terrific. The enemy never understood all these code messages that were sent in battle. We don't understand it either," he said. "But it works. Send us some more Navajos." So Navajo Code was tested in actual battle in the first landing on Guadalcanal. And it was accepted to be an official United States military code to be used in every landing in the Pacific. They created 2 communication networks, Marine Corps and Navy. Navajo Communication Network for all top secret messages, confidential messages, would go through a Navajo network. There's also an English Communication Network for all other messages, messages that are not coded or messages that you don't care if the enemy breaks the code or understand what you're talking about, would go through English network. These 2 communication networks, Navajo Communication Network, English Communication Network, work side by side in every landing, in every major location in the landing. Front line, beach command posts, regimental unit, battalion units, company units, all ships used, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, submarine, aircraft carrier, all these units have these 2 communication networks in them. Marine airwind, Marine tank units, Marine artillery units, all have these 2 networks. So every landing after Guadalcanal, the next landing, Cape Cluster, Bougainville, New Britain, these 2 communication networks were in action. Tarawa, Real Bad Island. After Tarawa, Macon. After Macon, Kwajalein. After Kwajalein, Inuitok. After Inuitok, Saipan. After Saipan, Tinian. After Tinian, Guam. After Guam, Peleliu, a real bad island. A cousin of mine was killed. He was a code talker on Peleliu. Every landing, they always select about a dozen Navajo Code Talkers to land with the first wave. Why? Because they tell the Code Talkers who would be landing with the first wave, the first ones to hit the beach. After the gate goes down, they tell us, run like hell, take a few steps, hit the deck, and see where the enemy fires are coming from. They give us a map with grid lines. Hit the deck, see where the enemy fires are coming, look at your map, and send the location of that enemy gun position back to command ship. In a command ship, there's two tables. Around one table sits about 5 or 6 of us Navajo Code Talkers with headsets, receiving messages coming in from all these different places. Another table right next to us, around that table sits blonde-haired, blue-eyed guys, the English network guys. These two communication network working side by side. Message after the first fire is shot, message start coming in. If message coming in has Arizona, New Mexico, we receive those in Navajo code. We write it down in English. Navy assigns us runners to stand behind each one of us 24 hours a day until the island is secured. Message coming in has Arizona, New Mexico. We take it, we write the message from Navajo to English, hand it over our shoulder to the runner. He takes it up to the bridge, gives it to the general or the admiral directing the landing operation. They read it, they respond. The runner brings that message back. If it's got Arizona, New Mexico, we send that message that they want sent it back out, either back to the regimental unit, back to the beach command post, or to other ships, Marine Air Wing, Marine tank units. If it doesn't have Arizona, New Mexico, it goes to the English network guys. They send that in English. It stays busy 24 hours a day until the island is secured. That's how the system worked perfectly. Well, like I said, September 15, 8:30 in the morning, on the beaches of Peleliu, temperature 100 degrees. The first wave landed. My cousin and another code talker, we work in pairs because back in those days we had TBX radio. One cranks the generator and the other one handles the receiver and transmitter and the wires and antenna. The gate went down. The first wave started unloading on the beaches. Enemy fires open up. Before my cousin Tom could hit the deck, enemy machine gun went across here. His head fell off. Blood all down the line. Jimmy, the other code talker, they work in Paris, he didn't get hit. He was down sending messages back to the command ship. He's the one that told me what happened. War is ugly. We lost over 11 Navajo Code Talkers, kill in action, never made it home. More than 24 wounded, some of them real badly. Jimmy says, all down the line, all you could hear is Corman, Corman, Corman. Help, help, mother, mother. Yes, war is bad, ugly. But this very hour, we have many of our kids carrying weapons somewhere overseas. Why? Why do we do that? Because we love this country. Because we have freedom. We also have peace that we all cherish. That's why we don't want any of the ugliness of war to ever be in America. That's why we continue to join. There's 3 of us still alive, 3 Navajo Code Talkers still alive. Over 400 of us serve. And the 3 of us, the oldest one's 107. The next oldest is 98 or 99. And the youngest, 96. That's me. Only reason is I went in when I was 15 years old, lied about my age. As I said, we love this country. We don't want any ugliness of war to ever be on our home ground. We don't want our kids to be killed out there either. So it's important that what God has blessed us with, to be the only nation in the world who have not had any battle on our home ground. And we want to keep it that way. Someone said, the United States flag what makes that flag wave? His answer, it's not the wind that makes that flag wave. It's the last breath of millions of soldiers who defended that flag, America. It's their last breath that caused that flag to wave. Think about that. I want to thank you very much for asking me to be here to give you a little history of Navajo Code Talkers of World War II. The code was so good, it was never broken. They captured one Navajo. They knew, Japanese knew that these code words were Navajo words, but they don't understand. They captured a Navajo who was in the Army, Philippines, General MacArthur's army. They sent him over to Tokyo, have him come before Japanese communication experts. They were taping most of the messages that we were sending, and he had them listen to it. He asked the Navajo, what are they saying? Oh, they're talking about turkey. They're talking about jackass. And they punish him because they thought he was lying. But this Navajo didn't understand the code words. All he knows the Navajo words we were using. Let me give you one last example. On Iwo Jima, over 200 Navajo Code Talkers landed with the 3 divisions that landed, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Each division had at least 80 Navajo Code Talkers. So 3 times 80, you're talking about over 200 Navajo Code Talkers landed on Iwo to provide that communication. Well, Major Connor with 5th Marine Division made his report. His report said the first 48 hours of Iwo Jima landing, in his unit, over 800 messages were sent in Navajo code the first 48 hours on Iwo landing. You the other 2 units had the same traffic, so multiply 800 times 2. You're talking about over 200 messages sent in Navajo code the first 48 hours. Well, we do a little math. That means Navajo code going through the air every minute non-stop for 48 hours on Iwo. Major Connor also wrote in his report, without Navajo, Marines would never have taken the island of Iwo Jima. We didn't say that. The colonel said that in his official report. One message that I'm going to recite to you. This is the actual message that was sent on Iwo. On the north side, there's 2 or 3 little hills. 5th Marine Division was on the north side. 4th Division down the middle. 3rd Division down on the south side, Mount Suribachi. Well, on the north side, a company of Marines were in bad trouble. They were being fired upon from 3 different directions. Mortar shells were being dropped on them. They were desperately hanging on to life in their foxhole. Can't move. They were dropping mortar shells, firing machine guns on them. The colonel wrote a message asking for help, handed to a Navajo Code Talker assigned to that company. He then contacted Beach Command Post asking for help. This is what he said in Navajo. Tepe ana achimpi dat is tahi de na sonse taji tochen si da sa ta asta shash. Well, it took 20 seconds, that message asking for help in Navajo Code. If Navajos were listening on the reservation, what did they hear this Navajo Code Talker say in Navajo asking for help? This is exactly what he said. Sheep, eyes, nose, deer, destroyer, turkey, onion, seek horse, 362 bear. Does that sound like you're asking for help? Just a bunch of Navajo words. But the code talker at the other end, after hearing, he didn't write sheep, eyes, nose, deer. What did he write down? Send demolition team to Hill 362B. 3 little hills on the north side on here were 362A, 362B, 362C. Beneath 362B was the problem where this company was being shelled. Within 20 seconds, Beach Command Post organized heavy rescue unit to save that company of Marines. Tanks with flamethrowers and other heavy stuff went out there, saved that company. That's how Navajo Code was used. The only military code they tell us in modern history never broken by an enemy. Navajo Code. That's why the Navajo Code remained top secret for 23 years. They told us upon discharge, don't tell anyone what you did because it's still top secret. If your parents or someone asks you, what did you do in the war? Just tell them you're a radio man, that's all. Read newspapers, listen to the radio. When the Navajo Code is declassified, it'll come on the radio, it'll come in the newspaper. In the meantime, don't say anything other than the fact that you were just a radio man. So, sure enough, parents, relatives, hey, what did you do in the war? Our answer, oh, nothing, I was just a radio man, don't ask me any question. We keep saying that, read the newspaper, listen to the radio, no announcement. 1 year, nothing. 2 years, nothing. 5 years, nothing. After 10 years, we just forgot about it. The heck with it. We were just a radio man, no more. It was until 1968, 23 years later, Navajo Code was declassified. It came on the air, newspaper, television, name it. Then the media started coming after us, saying, what is this Navajo Code? Movie was made by MGM. We organized Navajo Code Talker Association. Now we can talk about it. We developed a little brochure for each one of us, Navajo Code Talk. This one is about Peter McDonald. I have a copy for each one of you. I'll sign it as you come by here. I'll hand it to you as a remembrance of your learning what the Navajo Code was all about. Top secret for 23 years. Why did they keep the code that long? They said the code was so good, it was never broken by any enemy. And we thought it might be used again. But it turns out that Navajo language was beginning to be known more and more outside the Navajo Nation. So they decided to go ahead and declassify it. And I'll have one of these for each one of you. I'll sign it and keep it for yourself. Now, I'll quit here and ask if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer.
Alrighty, so we'll open up to the audience for if there's any questions. So audience, please raise your hand if you have a question. Thank you, Mr. McDonald, for that fine presentation. And yeah, we're kind of thankful that you're able to come out here and make the long journey. So
I can't hear you.
oh, it was definitely great for you to come out here to have this experience firsthand. And so I know it's a long journey for your trip to come out here. And yeah, we thank you for your presentation today. And so yeah, we wish you safe travels and everything. So we'll open up to the floor.
Oh, and so when did you join the Navajo Talkers? How long was your service in the Navajo Talkers?
He was asking, how long was your service in the military?
I served 2 years, from 1944 until 1946. I ended up toward the tail end on Guam, and then landed in Tsingtao, China with 6th Marine Division after the Japanese emperor said we quit. That was the emperor, but there were close to 1 million Japanese in northern China. They said they're not going to quit. They will continue fighting, even though the emperor said they quit. So they sent 1st Marine Division and 6th Marine Division into North China to get those Japanese who didn't want to quit to quit. So 1st Marine Division landed Peking, 6th Marine Division, we landed on Tsingtao, China, October 1945. Eventually, toward the end of that, October 1945, I think October 25, 1945, we have a separate peace treaty ceremony with all northern China Japanese, where they turn in all their military weapons, tanks, artillery, guns of every sort, down to Tsingtao. They had a long table, signed peace treaty with them separately on October 25, 1945. So I spent almost a year in North China, too, with 6th Marine Division.
Great. I think we have another question for you.
I was hoping to find out if you still keep in touch with the other 2 fellow Navajo Code Talkers.
He wants to know if you still keep in contact with the 2 other Code Talkers.
What?
Oh, do you keep in contact with the 2 other Code Talkers?
Contact?
Do you speak with the 2 other Navajo Code Talkers? Do you still communicate with the Navajo Code Talkers, the other 2?
The other 2 Code Talkers, yes. Used to visit more often with John Kinsel at Lokachika. he's the oldest. But I'm not in a good walking condition, and my hearing is bad, so I couldn't even make a phone call. But I used to visit with John quite often, but now I just have contact with their kids. Sometimes they text me, and I text them. The other guy is Thomas McGay. He's near Gallup, New Mexico. He's 98 or 99, somewhere in that area. He and I went together on different areas, but he also is pretty much to himself. And so we really have not been, the three of us have not been communicating with one another as we used to about 10, 15 years ago.
What are your thoughts of the movies that have been made? I know there have been at least 2 movies made about the Navajo Code Talkers, one with Nicolas Cage. Have you seen those, and what are your thoughts of, how accurate they are?
What is your thought about the Nicolas Cage movie, the Navajo Code Talker?
What's that?
What do you think about Nicolas Cage in the Navajo Code Talker movie? Nicolas Cage, the Navajo Code Talker, the movie?
Oh, the movie, the Wind Talker. Yes. They spent, MGM spent about 3 months in Window Rock, Gallup, Navajo Nation, interviewing at that time, 2001, interviewed. We were still about 300 of us. They got a lot of stories to make a movie. When they finished the movie, they asked us to come to their first opening. When we saw there, the movie was a good war movie, but the whole movie was nothing about Navajo Code Talkers as what I told you. Nothing of what I told you is in there. But the movie was about Nicolas Cage. Whatever his problem was. And 4 or 5 Navajos used here and there, and that's about it. The movie didn't tell you why the Navajo Code was suggested, how it was developed, how it was tested, how it was first used in the battle to see if code could be used, and how it was used in all the landings in the Pacific. Didn't tell you any of that, except that one scene supposedly on the island of Saipan.
Okay, I think we have time for a couple more questions. Here's one.
Being the code was kept classified until 1968, did the code get used in like Korea and after World War II, or did it just not get used anymore?
Was the code used in Korea? Or was the code used in Korea or other wars?
And other
wars? Where was outside was the code used in Korea or Europe?
No. Navajo Code, so far as I know, was only used in the Pacific. Now, there are other tribes that used their language in World War I and also, I understand, World War II. But the only one that actually became official United States military code is Navajo. And that's why it was protected until it was finally declassified. Now, The other tribes who use their language are probably just for this week, it's for next month, or maybe 2 or 3 times here and there. But nevertheless, they use their language. I doubt if it was coded like Navajo did. We actually developed our own alphabet, and no one knew that except us. And we also created entirely different words for things that were Navajo-like. Navajo code word for Navajo code word for, let's say, it escaped my mind anyway. A hill. Navajo code word for hill. Navajo word for hill is daiskit. That's what every Navajo knows. Hill is daiskit. But we didn't use daiskit. We said Tlinta tsa. Tlinta tsa in Navajo means a sick horse. That is the code word for hill. Now, nobody knows that except us, that when we say a sick horse, we're not talking about an actual horse that's sick. We're talking about a hill. H-I-L-L. H, the code word for the letter H is horse, clean. So when I hear clean coming in, I'm not riding down a horse. I write down H. Tsa, sick or ill. I-L-L. You put the two together. H-I-L-L. You have a hill. So the first group that went in cleverly put the two together. Tlinta means sick horse in Navajo. Anybody who knows Navajo knows you're talking about a sick horse. But to us, when we hear Tlinta, we don't write down sick horse. We write down H-I-L-L. The same way with that word, that, le, T-H-A-T. We don't say le or that in Navajo. We say Tajibicha, turkey's hat. That will be the code word for the word T-H-A-T. And only we know when we say Tajibicha, turkey's hat, coming through the air, we write down T-H-A-T. That. A lot of words, we did that, break them up in such a way that it doesn't mean anything to anybody, but to us, it had meaning.
Okay, we're going to do one more question.
Could you tell us about your role in developing the gyroscope for the Polaris missile?
Do you mind telling your story about the gyroscope for the Polaris missile? The Polaris missile, the gyroscope, what was your roles?
Oh, after the war, I was a 6th grade dropout when I went into the Marine Corps because my grandfather thought that's all I need to know is how to read the English language and how to speak the English language and how to write it. So at 6th grade, he told me that's enough. The English language is not going to do you any good. So I've come and I'm going to teach you the Navajo way of life, how to be successful as a Navajo. So he starts teaching me Navajo songs, Navajo stories, Navajo this, Navajo that. Start here, and I was sixth-grade dropout. So when I came out, I took GED test. I passed it, and in 1 year I got my high school diploma. That's how I went into college and studied electrical engineering. I got my degree from University of Oklahoma. Went to work for Howard Hughes. And that's where I actually saw a design that was done by Howard Hughes' top engineering group. And I discovered that design was wrong. And I just demonstrated. And that's how Howard Hughes actually told me personally to go back to the reservation and bring back 10 more Navajos. He said, I want Navajos. If you can find mistakes made by my top engineers, I want 10 more Navajos. I told him I'm the first one that got that kind of degree. He said, forget it, I want 10 more. And the other guys told me, you don't say no to Howard Hughes. You do it. So I did. Couldn't find 10 Navajos. But anyway, when he got the contract for a Polaris missile, he actually outbid GE and other major companies developing the gimbal system, the guidance portion of the missile, Polaris missile. And that guidance portion had gyros in it. And the gyros specified by the Navy was that they want a gyro not to drift more than 2 degrees. And Howard Hughes told me, I'm giving you that contract. I said, look, I don't even know what a gyro looks like. He said, that's why I'm asking you. If you can discover mistakes made by my top engineers, I'm sure you could develop something that's going to meet the specs by the Navy on Polaris missile. He said, I also hired UCLA, a gyro expert, a professor. I want you to go there every evening. He's going to teach you what a gyro looks like. And that not drift more than 2 degrees. It turns out that there was no such gyro in existence in the world. Nobody has a gyro like that. The ones in airplanes, the ones in ships, they all drift by 4 or 5 degrees and had to reset it every so many hours. Navy didn't want that. Navy wants a gyro that's stable, not more than 2 degree drift, to hit a target 1,000 miles away. So Howard Hughes assigned me to that ridiculous suggestion. I know nothing, never seen it before. Well, it turns out that there was a professor at MIT named Dr. Draper. He was working on gyros. He was a gyro expert. He had a gyro that didn't drift more than 1 degree, but the gyro was this big around, about that long, like a 50-gallon tank. And what I need, what the Navy needs is a gyro that small. So working with Dr. Draper and Minneapolis Honeywell gyro companies, and Hughes told me, money, you have all the money you need. Don't worry about it. I'm giving you millions, giving you a buyer, a lawyer, and anything you need to get that gyro that the Navy wants. Well, with the help of Dr. Draper, Minneapolis Honeywell Gyro Company, we were able to reduce that big thing that Dr. Draper was working on down to that size. We had 1 year and 3 months to do it. That's what Howard Hughes told me. I want that done at least by 1 year. You got 1 year and 3 months. Well, we got it done in 8 months. Got that thing that Dr. Draper was working on down to that size. Dr. Howard Hughes was quite a man. I really like him. If he wants something done, he wants it. You can't say no to that guy. So I went, in the evening, I went to UCLA. I actually enrolled there in order to do that. I had this one gyro expert teaching me every night through the week, and then same time working over here on the gyro. He gave me an office, everything I need, and told Minneapolis, whatever $1 million you's going to pay you. Dr. Draper, Hugh's going to pay you. Don't care the amount, just get it done. So we got it. In 10 months, we got that done, delivered a system to the Navy, Polaris missile, tested, and a good job was done. So it was very interesting to work for a man that held all the money in the world. And with that, he wants whatever he wants, he does not want no. You don't say, I told the other people working with you, told me, don't ever say no to him. And he did. He did come through. And he made me a special engineer to him just because, like I said, I saw an error that was done in an earlier job that was done by his top engineers. That's the story on Polaris missile.
That's incredible. Thank you so much, Mr. McDonald. Yes.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for coming out to the event today. And for those of you that would like to get a little pamphlet signed by Mr. McDonald, yeah, please feel free to stick around and form a line here, and we can get some signatures.
Yes, if you would like to have signed, if you can form a line on this side, and we'll hand them to you, and then you can make your way around this way.
You can sign that. You can sign.